How's it going, everybody? It is Catfish on Ice, a brand new season 6 premiere coming at you. It's episode 233 with your host, Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. How you doing, Max?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing awesome, man. Got the new crib, got the new backdrop, as you can see.
I love the logo in the background there.
Yes, really excited to be in the new house and really excited to get a new episode out to y'all. We've taken a couple weeks off since the Preds got eliminated from the playoffs. So we are going to briefly reflect on how that happened and the season that just transpired, but we're really going to look ahead to the future. We're going to call this our off-season preview edition of Catfish on Ice. We are going to look ahead to what me and Max both expect to be another busy off-season for the Nashville Predators. Barry Trotz going into his second offseason in that role. So a lot to get into there, Max.
Oh, yeah. No, it's exciting. And, we always say, this is the second offseason of the new regime. Last year we were talking about they're new. We don't know what to expect yet. That's out the window now. This is going to be a defining summer, and they're established now. So we're going to see really what they're all about and see how they're going to take their plan out. They've had that audition year under their belt.
And you really wonder how Barry Trotz is going to approach what he just saw this team accomplish, overperform, if you will. Do you think he tries to keep that momentum going, which I think he does, or does he just kind of not be aggressive? I cannot see Barry Trotz not being aggressive this offseason.
I once again, I think as we've kind of talked about, and I think it was also mentioned in the end of the season press conference, I think we're going to see somewhat of a hybrid approach to the offseason. He's mentioned multiple times, including at the trade deadline, he's not going to mortgage a future. But at the same time, they're seeing what Andrew Brunette did with a roster that shouldn't have been where they are. There could be an opportunity or a few to make some moves for guys that are either younger and have futures in this league, or guys that are higher upside guys, but if they could not work out, but if they don't, not a big deal. So I could see Trotz doing some things to try and give this team a chance to win now, but also still not mortgage the future, which I know is tough. But, I can tell you personally, I've been fooling around with, looking at where this team is and stuff, and I've tried to predict some moves that could happen, and I think there is a way Trotz could do that.
So they have the fourth most cap space right now, according to Cap Friendly. Final cap space, $6.209 million projected final cap space of the season.
Going
the
into
three
this
teams.
offseason?
What's that?
Going into this offseason, we're going to have $6 million in cap space. It's going to have more than that.
It says final cap space, Cap Friendly, $6,209,000.
I don't know. I feel like we're going to have more than that, but I don't know.
Oh yeah, well, definitely it's not set in stone. A lot can happen.
Are you talking about just for the end of this year?
Yeah.
Oh, not going to next offseason. Okay, that makes more sense. And okay, I was completely baffled there.
You're good. Yeah, you got Buffalo, Anaheim, and Chicago who have more final cap space.
That would make sense naturally.
Yeah, obviously a lot's going to change because you don't know who's going to be re-signed and all that stuff.
Right. Okay, I misunderstood.
Just where we sit right now. But sorry to throw you for a curveball there. We are going
with the curveball.
On that note, we are going to break down our best bargain contracts that are on this team right now.
Yep.
Players who get the most bang for your buck. It's a general manager's dream when they have these types of players because it allows them more flexibility to go out and get more players. And so when you look at a team like the Predators, there are definitely plenty of candidates on this team right now who are probably underpaid, and they are a bargain. So me and Max are going to break down that, who we think is our maybe 5 most bargain contracts. We're also going to really dive into the big trade news of Mitch Marner, who is going to be at the top of everyone's list. I put an article out there last week saying that I think Mitch Marner and the Predators are a horrible match and that it would not be worth the risk. It would not be worth the north of $10 million you would have to invest in. And he has a no-move clause, so you don't even know if he wants to come to Nashville. He wants to stay with the Leafs from what he has said, but I don't. All signs are pointing to there's no way the Leafs will be able to.
There's one thing I've learned over the years of, seeing players talk and all that, and coaches, you never know, despite what they say, the media.
Well, all we can say is you naturally think the Predators are a team who are in power to pursue a player like Mitch Marner because they have UC Saros who they could trade. That's who you keep seeing get linked up. But there's other ways you could you're seeing people throw out all kinds of
Absolutely.
trades out there on Twitter and stuff. So we're going to talk about that. I don't even know what Max's opinion on this is, so I can't wait to hear from him.
All right. I'll keep it for now.
We got the playoff. We also, who is the highest priority free agent that the Predators need to get re-signed this offseason? We are going to answer that question.
Yep.
Highest priority, got to re-sign this player this offseason. And it doesn't even have to be a free agent this offseason. So I'll even make it fair to
okay. I thought
you would like to.
That may change my answer. I don't probably not too much, but yeah.
Yeah, so you can think about that a little bit. We got some time. Also, still got the Stanley Cup playoffs going. We're watching, of course, the Bruins and the Panthers. What a series that has been. Just back and forth, so much drama. So we got that going. We got Dallas just putting it to the Avalanche in their series.
Colorado got there, like emotionally, it's got so much taken out of them. I mean,
I will say my bracket challenge cup final pick is looking really, really solid right now. I got 7 of the 8 first round matchups right. So I'm patting myself on the back for that one. And I got the Rangers beating the Stars in the cup final. So right now I'm in cruise control. My Stanley Cup pick looks pretty solid, but we'll see. Also, what about Vancouver hanging with the Oilers?
Dude,
does that make you feel a little bit better, Max, about the Preds losing to the Canucks?
I gotta say about Vancouver. I mean, they're a team that between the series against us and a series against Edmonton, there's been a lot of games where you've watched and you're like, how in the world did they win those games? But you got to kind of respect the team that just scratches and claws and wins games they shouldn't win. I mean, we talk about the Preds being relentless and always grinding games out. That's kind of what they're doing. And I mean, maybe a little different, but like Vancouver always kind of finds a way. And I don't know. I just respect it. I really do.
So it really didn't take me that long compared to other past first round exits for me to get over this one. I kind of processed it pretty quick. Woke up the next morning after the Preds were eliminated, and I really wasn't that upset about it. I mean, of course, I was like sad to see him get knocked out, but it was such a crazy roller coaster ride all year, and they were just the 18-game point streak and just everything that happened, and it's just like if it had to end, I guess that's how it had to end, right? Like, I mean, but now you see Vancouver really putting it to the Oilers as well right now. And what the most frustrating thing about the first round series against Vancouver was you're talking about the 2 worst offensive teams in the first round this year played each other.
Right.
So if the Preds could have just found any kind of offense, they knock out the Canucks easy, and they're the ones playing the Oilers right now.
I mean,
that's the most frustrating part about that.
The thing that really leaves a bad taste in my mouth is, after that game 4, because that series should have gone to Vancouver 2-2. And honest to God, I think the Preds win if they win the series, if that game goes their way. I mean, that was just that even a few weeks later, that's just such a tough game to swallow. But I mean, overall, this team with the roster they had was, and with how things have been going up to the 18 game point streak, this team shouldn't have been in the playoff spot. This team scratched and clawed all year, fought the whole way, and no matter what happened, even though that series went the way it did, and with that loss in game 4, I'm so proud of the team. And I'll also say this: I'd rather a loss like that happened in game 4. I'd rather that happen in the first round than in like the conference finals or finals, because then it really, really, at least in that case, you could say, okay, this team probably shouldn't have it if they're going to let games like that slip in the first round.
Very true. Very true. All right. Finally, we're going to wrap up episode 233, season 6 premiere of Catfish and Ice, talking about our Milwaukee Admirals, who have advanced in the Calder Cup playoffs, came back from 2 games down and won all 3 games at home, because the way they do it, if you get home ice advantage, you play the last 3 games of the 5-game series at home. They lost the first 2 and won 3 in a row against the Texas Stars, affiliate of the Dallas Stars. So pretty thrilling stuff there. Got some players we really need to talk about in that series. That's for the Preds prospects that are going to have a good chance to make the team next year. Zach LaRue really tearing up the stat sheet. Some people were ready to give up on Zach LaRue in terms of ever having a chance at the Preds roster just because of his disciplinary problems
Right.
and just not being able to stay out of the box and the getting suspensions. But he has really rounded out his game, and you got to think that he is going to be one of the top players to have a chance to make the team out of training camp.
No, there's going to be a lot of eyes on him for sure.
All right. With that said, let's get going here with episode 233 of Catfish and Ice with Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. Hit subscribe below if you're watching on YouTube, or hit follow if you're watching on X right now. We really appreciate it. And also comment live with us. Get in on the conversation. Let's get into it. Off-season to-do list. Let's get it going here. First and foremost, UC Saros has to be at the top of that list, right?
I mean, obviously, that's the big thing that looms large here. The way I look at it is, no matter what you do, there's got to be at least some kind of decision making made on the goaltending situation. And, whether that means you extend, my personal preference is, and I'm sure it's in accordance with a lot of other people, including yourself, my preference is that they trade Saros. But, you really,
That's
for
mine.
me, my biggest thing is, you really want to go into this coming season with a decision made there.
Yes.
Whether you wind up signing him long term or trading him, I just don't want to go into the season. Signing him long term, I don't want to put that much money into him, to be honest. But like, what really scares the crap out of me is going into the coming season with no decision made and knowing that you got to trade him by the deadline, or else you're going to let him hit free agency. That cannot happen.
Yeah. I just don't want it hanging over the team's head either.
It's a distraction.
It will be a distraction. It needs to be taken care of, because we're going to get into it a little bit later when we do our Milwaukee Admirals update, but Yaroslav Askarov has not looked too great. In fact, he was benched.
He's not looked great. He's not playing hardly.
Well, he played the first couple. He started the first two losses.
Right.
And had like a sub 90 save percentage and got kind of bullied around.
That's going to have a factor, whether that, no matter how it makes a difference, it's going to have a factor.
And you're seeing people talk about it out there. Like, what do the Admirals do? Do they go back to Askarov in their second round series, or do they stick with Grosnick? Well, the obvious answer should be they should stick with Grosnick, because I think he put like a .920 save percentage in the 3 wins up. Yeah. Only gave up like 4 or 5 goals on like 50 plus shots faced. So you're going to stick with the AHL veteran, the guy who's been around in the minor leagues since 2014, 2015. So you're going with the veteran. But yeah, what does that say about Askarov in terms of being ready? You mean he's really going to be ready to be NHL duty?
Yeah.
Even if it's backup duty? I don't know. I
don't know either.
We might need one here. We don't know.
I also saw something, maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I saw a tweet from our friend Clay Brewer, who's been on this podcast before, and he said something. I'm not going to read the whole thing that he said, because he put a long tweet out there, but he basically said is like, look, which first of all, my preference, of course, you roll with the hot guy. But going back to what Clay said here is, in short, yes, it looks weird to bench a guy like Askarov, but it's not the most detrimental decision, because you want to develop Askarov, but you also have a bunch of other guys like what's his face, LaRue, like Fedor Svechkov, like Parson and Tomasino, other guys who still need time to prove. And if they keep playing Askarov for those other 3 games, if they make it that far, they probably don't win that series against Texas, but they're still going farther in the playoffs. And even though Askarov isn't playing, you're still getting a bunch of other playing time from these guys who are going to be pivotal for the Preds' future. And and I think Clay makes a great point there.
For sure. But we'll hit more on the Admirals a little bit later in the episode, but I had to bring that up just because when we're talking about UC Saros here, if you do extend him and give him the long-term deal this offseason, that means Kevin Lankinen is definitely gone. And then I guess the plan is you bring up Askarov to back up Saros for 2024-25.
There's so many ways the goaltending situation can go. It's hard to say one thing has happened. There's a lot of decisions that can be made.
I will say I didn't think Kevin Lankinen was going to get re-signed last offseason, and he did. I can't see it happening again, though.
My honest opinion, what should happen with Saros in the goaltending situation is you trade Saros, you re-sign Lankinen, and in the Saros trade, you get another goaltender kind of like Lankinen. You rotate both guys, and at the upcoming deadline, you trade one of the guys to keep the other, and then call up Askarov potentially at that deadline. But I'm with you. I mean, I will say I haven't watched the Admirals much at all, so I can't give like a true opinion that I've seen him play and all of that. But just on a vibes analysis and knowing that he hasn't played, you don't want. I mean, you got to be careful, and I wouldn't bring him up for this coming season just based on the stuff I've seen.
So Johnny gets in on the YouTube chat and says exactly what I think. What I've been vocal about thinking the Predators should do. The best course of action is, for a much, much cheaper deal, you can extend Kevin Lankinen and bring up Askarov, and just you have to figure out what you have here with Askarov, one way or the other. And so you might have to live with the consequences where he loses you some games and he's not ready, but you will have Kevin Lankinen there to be the starter. He's going to be much cheaper than having to sign UC Saros long term.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not committing nearly as much money. You'll have more money to build the team around the goaltender, because one thing we do know, the Predators lacked offensive firepower in the series against the Canucks.
Oh, yeah.
It fizzled out. They didn't have enough. Now, some of that could be said that some of the younger players just weren't ready yet. I thought Luke Evangelista had a pretty good first-round series, but, man, Tommy Novak even said himself in the post-series interviews that he didn't have it. It wasn't a great series for him, and it wasn't. You didn't see as much depth scoring, hardly any, really, in that series. But you also didn't.
Period.
But you also didn't see the top line dominate like you saw him dominate all season long.
No.
You didn't see Philip Forsberg take over like you thought. Ryan O'Reilly had a really rough series, and he admitted that as well. He said, "I was awful," basically, is what he said.
Yeah, I mean, there's. Again, as we talked about, and I know you wrote an article saying this, it was a series where it was impossible for any, one player to take over. But if the Preds had a little more firepower in their middle six, they probably have enough to win that series. So both things can be true at the same time.
And so when you're thinking about signing a long-term extension for Saros instead of trading him and getting possibly an impact offensive scoring player, maybe even two decent offensive players in a trade, definitely get some draft picks, definitely get something to boost up your offensive talent if you trade away Saros. How much of a drop-off are we really – I know there is some drop-off, but how much of a drop-off is it really going to be from Saros to Lankinen? Enough to make this team suddenly not a playoff contender again? I think this Predators team, if they show us what they showed us last season, even with Lankinen in net, as the full-time starter, I think they can make the playoffs with Kevin Lankinen as their starter.
Obviously, you're no longer going to have a goaltender that's just capable of, taking over games like Saros did. So you're definitely going to lose that. At the same time, though, you're going to have an offense that really can consistently win you games. So at the end of the day, it probably evens out, honestly.
So one thing we know is they got to, one way or the other, they got to figure out what they're going to do with this. And I'm sure Trotz is on the same page here. He's got it at the top of his list for his offseason to-do list. It is that they seem very adamant that they do want to keep Saros.
But
so that could just be bluffing. That could just be keeping your hand close to your chest. But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. Other things offseason to-do list is, of course, what will the Predators do in free agency? What is the top priority free agent or future free agent? It doesn't have to be a 2024 free agent. Let's take Saros out of it because we just talked about him. Let's talk about the unrestricted free agents that the Predators have this offseason. They got 6. I would think that your top priority unrestricted free agent is Alexander Carrier.
Probably. I mean, my honest opinion is that, looking on the offensive side of things, I mean, I don't see a guy, maybe Jason Zucker, but I really don't see any forward who I think is a must keep. Carrier is probably the best player, the guy that you would be priority free agent. That being said, though, there's so many bodies on defense. It's hard for me to say he's a true priority with, just from the fact that you probably got to free up some room up there. I mean, but I would say if Saros gets traded, then Lankinen becomes a priority free agent. But
for sure.
Looking at it though, I can't say there's anyone who I'm like at this moment you absolutely have to keep. I really think I could see all those guys walking. Honestly,
really,
I could see all. I mean, probably won't happen.
That'd be a huge turnover.
That I probably will not happen. But like, there's no one guy on that list where I'm like, you have to keep him. Granted, I would prefer you don't let everyone walk, but I'm not pinpointing any one player who absolutely must stick around.
Look, Alexander Carrier really showed me something this year. His defense was outstanding. He was right up there with Roman Josi in terms of defensive impact, blocking shots. I think the best is yet to come from Carrier from an offensive standpoint. I could see if Carrier was lost in free agency this offseason, which is very possible, I could see him really, really breaking out for another team.
Probably.
In his new scenery.
I'm sure there's an element of, Andrew Burnett's system. He was learning that. That was probably some of it there, but.
And after Carrier went the long road to get to the Preds. He played for the Admirals for a little bit. He worked his way up. He wasn't some like big prospect that just busted in right away and started taking over. He had to work his way up, and he's been a very gradual development type of player. And I do think that the best could still be yet to come from Carrier. So I would really hate to see him lost in free agency, but it's going to be very, very difficult to keep him because he's going to get a pay raise. And he's awesome. Go ahead.
Keep going. You're finishing.
I was going to say it's going to be really hard to keep him, but at the same time, he's got a lot of value. So we'll see what happens there. When you brought up Jason Zucker, and I think he's going to be too expensive to keep.
I think so too.
And I don't think he's a big enough impact player. He can help this team in the regular season. I think he can do a lot of good things for any team he's on. He's a great leader. He's a great veteran, but I don't want to tie up. I mean, he's coming off a contract of $5.3 million.
Definitely not worth that.
He's going to expect. He might not demand that much. He might even see a decrease in pay wherever he goes next. But I just don't see how the Predators keep him.
I was trying originally to keep him, but I'm with you. The more I look into it, I just don't think it's worth it. You're going to get him to a middle six role at best. I just think that money can be dispersed elsewhere. Here's the question I want to ask you, going back to Carrier a little bit. If Alexander Carrier does come back, which it seems like you want him, then what do you do with Dante Fabro?
I mean, he signed for one more
year. You also
year.
Spencer Stasny up. You still got a bunch of guys. Someone's got to go.
Well, Tyson Berry's definitely gone.
Right,
we know that.
Yep.
I mean, it's a lot of shuffling the deck chairs right now. You're right. Yeah. But I do know that the Predators do want to keep. I think Carrier has a way higher ceiling than Dante Fabro.
Probably.
I think Fabro is what he is, which isn't a bad player by any means. I'm not trying to trash Dante Fabro, but I could be totally wrong on this. I think Carrier's future is much brighter, and he has much higher upside to become a really good offensive defenseman down the road.
I definitely agree there. I don't think Fabro has a ton of offensive upside. Like, he does have a cannon of a shot, but overall offensive impact, I don't think. Really.
And I still see Fabro make way too many critical mistakes in bad moments, whether it's turning over the puck. Whereas I see Carrier, and he just seems like a smarter player, a wiser player, a higher IQ player. He doesn't make as many mistakes. What hurts Carrier is he's a little undersized. But I mean, I loved what he did in the defensive zone this year. I mean, he was one of the top shot blockers in the entire league for a while. So it's going to be really hard to keep him. They're going to have to pay up a lot of money, and it might be a little too rich for my blood. Then you probably let Carrier walk, and you're still good. You're still in good shape if you lose Carrier. It's not like you don't have, and I think that's what you're trying to say, Max.
Well, I will also say that, that's what I'm trying to say there, because the amount of bodies on defense, but also, what I was going to say is, based on how the coach, even though they re-signed Fabro for another year, they pretty much showed us they like Carrier more than Fabro, at least to play, because Fabro was sitting for a ton of games. Carrier, I don't think, was a healthy scratch for one.
And looking down the list, you might be onto something, Max. Maybe none of them are a top priority. Maybe that's the answer to this question that we just asked.
I really don't think. Now, of course, like I said, if Saros gets traded, then Lankinen immediately becomes a top priority. But
I
other than
would,
that,
I would like the Predators to keep Kiefer Sherwood. I'm not going to go on a limb.
That's the one I'm thinking is the one you keep, if any, especially because you keep that fourth line, that backbone fourth line, Smith, McCarron, Sherwood intact. That's the one where I'm like, I would actually like to see him come back.
And it's not going to be terribly difficult to keep him.
No,
I would think he wants to be. I'm sure Kiefer Sherwood wants to be here. It's not going to be hard to keep him here.
Not at all.
I don't think the demand for him on the open market is going to be insane either. So you should be able to work out a deal to keep Sherwood in Nashville for around what you gave to Cole Smith. So Cole Smith got bumped up to $1 million. Sherwood could get bumped up from $775,000 to $1 million, and then everyone's happy.
Yeah.
You give Sherwood a little bit of a raise. You give him that stability, knowing that he's going to be in the same role he was last year, most likely. I think that's win-win for both sides.
Yeah.
So I would like to see that happen. I think it's a fair bet to make that happens.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in agreement there that Sherwood would be the one that, again, not enough to be a guy that you must keep, but that's one where I'm like, it would be nice if he returned.
Tyson Barrie got to be gone, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just we thought he would have been traded a long time ago, but now that the season's over, he's done. And I'm not trying to say bad things about Tyson Barrie, but just saying from what's happened, we know he's going to be gone.
Yeah. Going further down, I just want to look at the prospects a little bit. We got a bunch of restricted free agents, but a lot of times they find ways to hold on to the ones that they really want to keep.
Yeah.
So not really too concerned about any of those.
Which it's on the to-do list, but those are guys you should bring back. I mean, looking at the guys that you'd want to bring back, Parsonen, Afanasiev, Tomasino, which who the heck knows what happens there. Stasny, Delgaizo. So there's a few guys, but again, not anyone that's going to command a ton of money. Those guys should all be brought back.
And I mean, to go back to your point on just the Preds defensive corps right now and everything they've got going for them, they still got Mark Delgaizo, who showed very much that he can play in the NHL and be consistent and be relied upon to play in the NHL. And he's also having a great showing in the Calder Cup playoffs right now for the Admirals. So, I mean, between Spencer Stastny and Mark Delgaizo and then everyone else you got, I guess Carrier is expendable, but it just hurts that you didn't bank on it and trade him when you did.
I was saying all over. That was the one move I would have made. Traded Carrier at the deadline. I was saying the whole time.
Speaking the truth, Max. I can't disagree with you there. I can't. All right. Next thing I have really on the to-do list, and it's going to be later on into the offseason, but this coaching staff is going to have to start thinking about, okay, which prospects do we think are really close to being ready to make the NHL jump next year? And you got to start looking at your roster that way. Or does Trotz look at the roster he has right now? And even if he loses some of the free agents, that'll open up some spots to maybe put in a Zachary Leroux. But they got to start figuring out how they feel about their bubble players, their prospects who are right there on the cusp of making that jump.
Spencer Stastny has to be in Nashville next year, right? He has to.
They were
do you even consider him a prospect anymore? I don't.
I mean, the fact that he was a game one starter in the playoffs, says a lot. And then he had the unfortunate injury, and now he's finally back. He's been reassigned to Milwaukee, recovering from that injury. So I'm really happy to see the Admirals are still in it, so that Stastny, among all the prospects, are getting this vital extra time to play right now in the Calder Cup playoffs, because that's, how huge that is for prospect development. That they're getting to play playoff hockey right now. Really good for the prospect pool that's happening. But we got of course, we'll talk more about the draft later. I haven't even begun to dig into the draft class. And I know the Predators are drafting 22nd, I think, in the first round. So they're kind of in that no man's land.
That sounds about right. I don't remember exactly where, but that sounds about right.
But if you are thinking draft way ahead of time here, the Preds have a lot of draft capital that they're going to be able to use at their disposal to maybe facilitate a trade. So that's going to bring us into our next topic here. This is episode 233, Catfish and Ice, season 6 premiere. Go ahead.
So there was one more thing I was going to say on the to-do list.
All right, bring it.
And I'm just going to say right off the bat, some of the players I know at least one of the players I'm about to mention here. It's not going to be popular, but here's what I'm thinking here. So at the end of the press conference, or not the end, but like during the press conference that Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett had last week, Barry Trotz mentioned one of his priorities is getting the team younger. Well, look at this roster you got right now and look at your 5 oldest players. Roman Josi, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Shen, Ryan McDonough, Gus Nyquist. Obviously, Yosi's not going to go anywhere. No worry about that.
I know where you're going with this.
you know where I'm going with this. Ryan O'Reilly, I'm sure, is not going anywhere either. That'd be a shock completely. Luke Shen is not untouchable, but there's not really going to be a market for him. But you get to those last 2 guys, and especially McDonough being in there, I know is not popular with pretty much anyone. But I'm not saying that if Gus Nyquist and Ryan McDonough are on this roster in the fall, that it's a failure. But you got to at least gauge the market for them. And I would honestly like to trade Nyquist because and I'm not going to go too much into that because I'm currently in the middle of writing an article for Breadlines talking about that. But I personally think Nyquist is a fantastic trade piece this offseason.
You definitely have to do your due diligence and see what's being offered at the very least. I'm not totally against it. The only thing that scares me is you finally have a top line that is just cooking. And you know how long the Predators have really tried in this team's history to just get a trustworthy. It ended up being the most productive top line they ever had. It was more productive in the regular season than the Jofa line was in their heyday. So it's hard. Someone's going to have to really offer up something really, really sweet for me to come to terms with trading away Nyquist and breaking up that top line.
Well, let me ask you this question. Knowing that Nyquist did what he did at 34, what pretty much the season he had was a complete anomaly for what he's been doing in his career. Do you see him doing that again? I think it's very unlikely.
Maybe not exactly at that level, but I think they can still have a really good year as a top line together. And that takes me to the next question. Who do you bump up to the top line that's even ready to take Nyquist's spot?
And that's where I'm going. I think you potentially look into with the draft capital you have, maybe
acquiring someone from the outside to put them in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now you got me interested. I thought you were going the route of, we'll give Tomasino another chance.
Oh, no.
You know, we'll throw Parsonen back up there. I'm not saying those young guys don't deserve another chance.
Evangelista maybe could be, but I still don't think so yet.
Well, the problem with Evangelista being on the top line is he is just so undersized, and he gets bullied off the puck a lot, and it's just he's got to use his skill and he's got to use his elite shot to really make that happen. I got to see Evangelista take a huge jump this offseason to be ready for the top line.
Yeah, I don't think so. But my just to clear it up, my thought with Nyquist is using him in the draft capital to potentially go big game hunting.
Well, you always have to do your due diligence. I'm never gonna. No player should ever be untradeable because it's all about what are they offering. You know, you can't say they're untradeable until you hear the deal and you hear what's being offered. So I'm not against it. I think you're onto something for sure. All I'm saying is it scares the crap out of me to think about breaking up that top line. Predators going to 2024-25 without an answer to their top line. And then we're right back to shuffling the deck chairs every game, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And that seems like a recipe for disaster going into year 2 for Burnett. It could really stop a lot of the momentum you built last year. But you are right that there's a good chance that Nyquist doesn't have as good of a year at his advanced age as he did last year. So a lot to juggle there. We'll see.
I'm surprised you didn't give me more pushback on Ryan McDonough, quite honestly.
I'm not going to even dignify that with a response. I would be so mad if they traded Ryan McDonough. Oh, man. You don't even get me started. You notice I just skipped that on purpose, right?
know, I guess so.
All right. We have plenty of the offseason to get more into Ryan McDonough. But and I will say there might not be a market for him, but it doesn't mean you couldn't unload Luke Shen if you want.
Well, I will say, Luke Shen for sure. Well, the thing with Ryan McDonough is he does have a no trade clause, so he definitely has power. So that the Preds don't really even have that much.
And he's like captain-like material on the team. He's a captain without being named a captain.
But I have a take, but we can save that for another day.
Okay. What about Luke Shen? I mean, I know you're not going to get anything massive in return, but just unloading Luke Shen will free up space in your defense.
Make you younger. Yeah.
So, I mean,
that for not a great return.
I mean, he's a right defenseman, so you can make more room for all these other
And
players that
that
you're
pretty
trying to
much
make room
ensures
for.
that Dante Fabro stays, and that makes it much easier to sign Carrier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even if you go into it not expecting to get a whole lot, you can try to unload Shen and even maybe retain some salary to get rid of him. Honestly,
Got to be careful with that though, because the limit for retaining salary, I believe, is 3 players, and the Preds already have 2. So and it'd be on the books for 2 more years. So you can't just
that's true.
Yeah, you can't just say, oh yeah, we'll retain salary.
At his $2.750 million per year, and he's got 2 more years left. That is going to be hard to unload to somebody.
I don't see another team taking that on.
We're probably stuck with him.
Yep. Which
All
I don't
right,
think
with that,
like most of the Preds fan base does. But
with that, perfect segue. Let's look on the bright side of things. Our top 5 current bargain contract that the Preds have right now, and we don't have to go 5 through 1. We'll just name 5. But let me start with one that I think's just been a ridiculous bargain for a long time, and that's Colton Sissons. I mean, he signed that contract a while ago, and what he does for this team and what he gets paid is, it's just really crazy to me. Like, it really is. $2.857 million. 3.4% of the cap space is made by Colton Sissons, and he's had this deal since 2019, 2020. So he's already played 5 years of this deal. He's got 2 more years left.
It's crazy.
I mean, that's a great bargain right there. He takes faceoffs. He plays defense. He's a two-way guy. He even saw his offense spike up a little bit this year under Andrew Burnett's system. He's only 30 years old, so it's not like he's completely past his prime either. So just holding on to that contract, he frees up so much more money. And, the length of that contract when it was signed in 2019-20 was scrutinized a lot because it was like, wow, that's a lot of term to put into Colton Sissons.
Right.
And maybe he never completely lived up to getting that long term of a contract, but the per year salary, you can't beat that.
He's worth every penny.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I looked at this list was I thought they were very much 2. Now there are some other guys on my list, and I thought, but before you come at me, because some of these might be others might be controversial, but I thought there were 2 guys who were very clearly at the top of the list for me, and they were Gus Nyquist and Ryan O'Reilly. As far as
Nyquist, considering they play on your top line,
Nyquist 75 points, not even making $3.25 million a year, crazy. Yeah. Crazy.
Really crazy. And
Ryan McDonough doing all he does leadership-wise, two-way player, all that stuff for not even $5 million.
And then you look at what Zucker makes. Zucker makes more than O'Reilly.
Yeah.
So, 2 good ones for sure. I also had them on my list as well. Another bargain deal that I have on my list is on the defensive side of things, and that would be, where's he at? I mean, Jeremy Lauzon.
I also had Jeremy Lauzon on there.
And I would have never even thought about saying that going into last season. I mean, this is a complete 180 that I've taken on this.
Me too.
$2 million per year, but did he ever earn it? He's the all-time hits leader now for a single season. He became that wrecking ball enforcer for the Predators as being one of the heaviest hitting teams in the league this past year. And for $2 million per year, I mean, and you've got him for another 2 years as well at that rate. I mean, he's never going to be like a top defenseman in the league or anything close to that. But for what he does for that amount of money, that's money well spent right there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Alexander Carrier literally talked about how thankful he is to have him as a pairing mate because so many players fear him because of how much of a wrecking ball he is. Like, that's that right there. I mean, I know physicality, you can't just live and die by physicality, but that's a huge part. But besides that, Lauzon he improved this. I don't think there's an area of the game where he didn't improve himself. Offensively speaking, defensively speaking, everywhere, Lauzon took at least one step forward.
He did. And again, when he signed that original contract, fans hated it. I remember seeing it. They were like, what are we doing? Like, signing this guy for this long? Like, he's a scrub. Like, fan bases of the previous teams he's played for called him a scrub. But he has really went out there and proved it. I can't wait to see what he does next year.
Even the analytics models, which hate him, they all said year he was so much better.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to wonder where he fits in next year if Carrier is gone, because that pairing with Carrier was just really, really I mean, no one expected that, but that was such a great pairing. You break down the defensive analytics for them as a pairing, and they were just as good as the top pairing in a lot of categories.
Yeah. I mean, that would be, especially if they could get back as like a second or third pairing, would be really good. They were really consistent.
Another one I got. Let's go back to the fourth line. How about Michael McCarron?
Interesting one you put on there. I didn't quite put him on there, but he does do a lot of good things.
I mean, he made $775. He's making the minimum for what he does.
I mean, he is going to be making $900 this coming year.
I'm talking about just last year what he was playing on when we talk about bargain contracts. But even at $900, even if you want to say $900, that's still a bargain for what he does.
No, I like, Michael McCarron does a lot of really good things. Andrew Brunette talked about how, a big part of the reason they brought him back was because he was like a big brother for a lot of the guys in the locker room, which is great because it shows that, he's going to be a guy who, even if he's not like a player for the future, is going to have an impact on the future and helping kind of mentor these guys, which is so valuable.
All right, we got a comment coming in here from our buddy Buster Bennett on YouTube. Welcome, Buster. He said a hot take here from Buster. I love it. It says, trade Askarov for a ELC Ford, re-sign Saros. I am not sold that Askarov is a player that trots digs with his flamboyant style. Oh,
interesting.
I don't know about that last part, but I do know that a lot of people are starting to not be so convinced on Askarov as they once were. But Max, you always said this. You always said that you have to be very patient with goalie prospects.
Yes,
you have to bring them along.
Absolutely.
You're not going to just jump right into the NHL and just start taking over.
No. And even Barry Trotz too said at the press conference that he thinks Askarov is getting close, but you can never over marinate these goaltenders in the AHL. The more of course you can't keep them there for 10 years, but you don't want to just you don't want to just rush them by any means.
No. All right. So do you think there's a scenario where Askarov plays another year in Milwaukee?
Probably. I think it could very well happen. I literally said, I think that he starts the next season in Milwaukee.
So many goalie questions, and I just want all the answers now, and it's impossible to have all the answers now.
Well, speaking of goalies, and this might be a disagreement, I actually did put UC Saros in the bargain contract.
Oh, you have to.
That was going to be my last one. He's going to get paid next year, and $5 million for him, even though it's still a good bit of money.
What you have been getting out of him for $5 million per year is just it's highway robbery. It really is. I mean, even though the Preds have failed to make it past the first round with Saros, and his numbers in the playoffs are less than tantalizing, it's still $5 million per year for what he has been as a franchise goalie. Is just incredible, and that's why we all know that you either have to trade him or you're gonna have to surrender a lot of money to keep him, and but you have to put him in the bargain column for sure.
I'll also say something a little back on the Askarov topic a little bit. Johnny just texted me saying he was listening. He was either Robbie and Rexford or Darren McFarland's show that he heard that the average age for a goalie prospect when they make the NHL is 23 or 24. Askarov is 21 right now, going to be 22 in the offseason. But that to say, you don't need to rush to bring him up right now.
No, you don't have to. But with that, you do have to. Oh, then you have to figure out who's going to back up either Lankinen or Saros next year. So
Saros trade, get back. I was saying like in a Saros trade, maybe get back another goaltender.
I mean, you would have to at that point.
Yeah. Or just sign a guy in free agency.
There's just so much up in the air with this goal we've seen this coming for a while. Ever since Askarov got drafted, way down the road,
right then we knew there was going to be something.
What is this? And then when Lankinen was re-signed last offseason, that made you really start thinking. You just started looking down the road. And then this past trade deadline, you were thinking more about it. It's just been this endless saga of what's going to happen, and it's finally culminating.
But it feels like it's been building up more and more and more. Like I feel like kind of started it like a few years ago. We were like, kind of toy with it a little, the thought of it, but not actually do it. But since then, it's been getting more and more thinking, okay, like we're to the point where we actually might want to do this.
Yeah.
Every year, every month, I would say it's gotten more and more likely.
We got another comment here from YouTube from Brando. Says there is something going on lately where modern hockey fans are dislike physical hockey and physical hockey players.
So I watched Game 6 of the Preds Canucks series, not at home or in the arena, but I was actually visiting my buddies in DC, and I was telling them, guys, get ready to watch this series. This is like the fewest goals, fewest shots, most hits, this, stuff, and that. And they were saying the whole time, your team's getting no shots on goal. This is crazy, blah, blah. You guys look terrible. I'm like, I warned you guys, this is this series right here. Like, you wanted to watch grinding hockey like this? Well, here it was. But no, they were saying, man, they were just giving me all kinds of crap for the fact that the Preds could not muster a shot on goal.
Well, that final game, that Game 6, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Biz from Spit and Chicklets or one of them. They were on there saying, good God, this is the most boring hockey series I've ever watched in my life. Like, I mean, all the jokes were being thrown at the Canucks Preds series for being so boring and just neither team could really get anything going. But
one of my buddies walked down at the end of the first period that night and he saw the shots and goals. It was like, well, clearly didn't miss anything. That's literally what he said.
It was pretty rough. It was. All right, let's get to our next topic, and that is the Mitch Marner trade talk that's going on here. Go check out my article that I put up on Predlines last week. Really dove deep into it, really got into my thoughts. I was very adamant on thinking that the Preds should not pursue this. They should steer clear. I do not need to see Barry Trotz have a death sentence, long-term contract go wrong. And I just don't see how you can make everything work to get Mitch Marner here. With all the money you would have to surrender, you would effectively say we are all in to win a Stanley Cup right now. Yeah. There's no other way you'd be able to justify it. The whole retool thing would go to the wayside. That's over. If you make a power move like that and you invest that kind of money and give up what it's going to take to get Mitch Marner here, it'll be great. It'll sell tickets. Don't get me wrong. It'll sell tickets. The Preds will be on TV a lot, national TV a lot more. All that'll be great. More of the national media will be talking about the Predators. It'll sell tickets. All that stuff will be true. But in terms of, wow, you're really going for broke if you go out and trade for Mitch Marner.
I'm largely with you on that, mainly from the standpoint of, if you're getting a guy like Mitch Marner, you're essentially saying we're going to sign him to another contract. And looking at, he's making north of 10 million right now. It's not going to be any cheaper with him. It's going to be at least 11 million, probably even more than that, probably closer to 11 and a half, maybe even more than that. But you're tying up so much money into that. I just can't see it. But now I will play some devil's advocate for it, mainly in the fact that he is still pretty young. And, as far as, getting a team that's going to be younger, all that is going to help that aspect of it. And he is a really good hockey player. And that's also part of it too, because sometimes when you have guys who you have an opportunity to get who are that good of players, sometimes you just take it. And I could understand that aspect of it too. But also another thing I was thinking about was, obviously, there's a lot of stigma on some of these guys on the Maple Leafs for, since they haven't won pretty much anything these years, they've been talked about as, soft, all this. And Mitch Marner's taken, I would say, most of the heat for that aspect of it. But here's one thing I will say, where if the Preds got him, I'd be kind of convinced all that wasn't really true. So when Ryan O'Reilly signed in Nashville, he was coming off of his time with Toronto for a few months. And it was made known that he didn't resign there, not due to money, but other reasons. And we can assume it had to do with culture stuff and stuff like that. Now, but here's the thing. If Mitch Marner is traded to the Preds, that essentially tells me that Ryan O'Reilly gave him a good word and was like, and none of that stuff really applies to Marner. Now, and who knows, but I would be very shocked if Barry Trotz were to make that move without consulting Ryan O'Reilly.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And look, I'll go back and say the same thing. It would definitely make the Predators. If you trade Saros to the Leafs, you got to assume Saros would be in this trade package, right? That's the only way it happens.
Saros and Nyquist, 100%.
I mean, Saros and Nyquist, you bring back Marner. I'm not worried about what you're sending away to get Marner. I'm worried about the money.
That's probably not all the trade.
But I'm not even worried about what you might give away to get Marner. I'm worried about the money you're going to have to pay Marner.
Exactly. Yes. That's my main holdup with it. 100%.
Because that can just go south very fast. Because even with a superstar player like Marner, you still got to have players around that player who can score and make things happen. And it's going to be really hard to build a team around Mitch Marner if you trade a lot of players away and you don't have a lot of money to spend anymore. You're going to have to really rely on your prospect pool to come up and be a bargain type of player. Right. So I just think it's too risky for my blood. I really do.
I agree. I think it's too big, too bold, too early.
But we will see. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. It does look like for sure Mitch Marner will be heading out of Toronto, which is, I
would definitely expect that he's played his last game in Toronto.
Just another mess up of a screw up of a year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, this team, this franchise it's
amazing, really.
Falls apart every year in the playoffs.
It's just basic probabilities. One of those years, they would have to do something. One of these.
Mitch Marner had one goal in the entire first round series.
There's something about that core never showing up and producing like they have to.
All right, we're going to wrap up episode 233 with our teams that we are pulling for left in the playoffs here. I'm really torn on this. I really don't know who I want to say that if someone's going to make me pick who I'm pulling for the rest of the way in the playoffs. A part of me wants to say Vancouver just because they've never won it, but their fans were so insufferable that I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
In Vancouver's defense, there was one guy who I actually know from years ago where I was writing for another website and he was a Canucks fan and he and I were actually interacting the whole series. And I texted him after saying, hey, man, good series. So that was one guy where I'm like, this is a cool guy. And if I'm going to want the Canucks to win, it's going to be for him.
Yeah. Our buddy Matt Hardesty jumps in. What's up, Matt? Hope you're doing good, brother. He says, man, that Shen contract would really be nice to not have.
Matt Hardesty and Justin Gambino, two of the guys we know of that group chat we have on Twitter, they love Luke Shen. I'll tell you that right now. Oh, yeah. They love Luke Shen.
Matt's got like at least 2 or 3 Luke Shen jerseys in the closet. He just doesn't want to tell anybody about them. Brando jumps on and says, what about Stamkos if he makes it to market? Mm-hmm. I would love that now.
Yes. Oh, and it's been rumored that if he does make the market, the Preds are going to be a suitor potentially.
You want to talk about getting help on your power play?
Oh, yeah. And Barry Trotz also mentioned that he still thinks that the center of the ice for the Preds isn't where it should be. So that's also potentially on the season to-do list. Help maybe strengthen that center of the ice position.
I definitely think Trotz has one big-time major move he makes this offseason. Whether it's going out and acquiring a player or whether it's trading Saros, he is going to make at least one really big splash this offseason.
Agreed.
Matt says, don't cuss me like that. They were fighting words right there. All right, fair enough. All right, so I'm really trying to think of who I'm pulling for the rest of the way in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's not that a part of me wants to say Dallas, but they are in the division. I can't
say Dallas. Now I would be happy for Matt Duchene to get a cup. I would be happy about that, but I can't pull for the Stars. I can't do it.
I mean, I do like the Panthers. I like their team. They're fun to watch. They're up 3-2 on the Bruins now. I
will say,
you know what? I'm not going to be a bitter fan here. I'm going to say the Canucks.
Okay, interesting.
It would be a fun story to see a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup again. Would be a really cool story.
Right.
That fan base is starved for a Stanley Cup. Never won one. Sorry to our buddy Johnny who lives up in Vancouver, and he would have to deal with that. But I'm going to put my bitter feelings aside, even though the Canucks knocked us out and their fans were really hard to deal with on social media. But it's fine. It's hockey. Fans get that way. No hard feelings. I'm going to say the Canucks. I'm going to say I'm pulling for the Canucks out of the teams that are left.
Now, I will say, for myself selfishly, I picked Boston to win the cup, and thankfully they still won the night and they're still fighting. So if I'm going off that route, that's obviously what I would want. But if I'm putting that aside, I honestly want to see the winner of the Carolina-New York series. I think those teams both are really they have really good teams. They've been going at it for a long time. I think they're really due. I would like to see. I would think whoever wins that series. If I'm putting my bracket outside of this, I would like the winner of that. I would like the winner of that series to win it all.
New York, the Rangers, they've been building their team into a cup contender for a few years now. And when they got knocked out last year, we said, "Don't worry, they'll be right back next year," and they did. And Carolina, same thing. Carolina's been building their team up to be a Stanley Cup contender for a long time as well. They've been able to overcome untrustworthy goaltending to get as far as they've gotten. So that's it. That's a series that you would think the Rangers are going to go ahead and take care of, finish business in, and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
They were up 3-0, but now it's only 3-2.
Yeah. So wow. Good stuff. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us for the first episode of season 6 of Catfish and Ice, episode 233, our off-season preview edition. A lot of the topics we talked about tonight, we will revisit later in the off-season. We got all off-season to get into so many more topics that we didn't even touch today that we will get to in future episodes. We appreciate you joining us. This has been Catfish and Ice with your hosts, Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. You all have a great evening. We'll see you soon.
See you guys later.